We are finally on.
All of this, how you say, wahala.
I tell you.
We're actually,
Wow.
we're actually broadcasting live right now.
Okay.
Um, Let me get the link for us to
All right.
send out. If you have anybody who might want to join or whatever, it doesn't matter.
Okay. I'm
Um,
trying to set my phone to do not disturb before I start receiving calls.
mm,
Okay. We're cool.
okay. How you been doing, man?
Great. Great, great is just like I was thinking about. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I was thinking about this program, this proposition they made,
Hmm.
and I was wondering a lot. So I was very happy when you proposed that we talk about it because I was wondering what are the positive aspect of it, what are the negative aspect of it. So I
Right.
think it's a very good idea. Are we on now?
No, we're on live right now. Right now, I'm just getting the link together. Where do you want me to post it? Do you want me to put it in any one of your groups? Do you want me to send it to you? This is for
Yes.
the.
Yeah, all the groups on my page. I will share them too now.
I will send it to your. I'll send it to your message now. This is for the YouTube live. If
Okay.
anybody wants to jump on
Mm.
and comment or anything like that, they can ask. They can ask for the link, and they can get directly into the Hangout, and they can come on and give their comments if they want. So I
Okay.
just sent you the YouTube link so they can listen live, and they can also chat in the chat room if they want.
Okay.
But let me just put it in the group here.
Try something. Let's see to go this way. I'm trying to turn the phone upside down to see if the view will be better this way. But let me just let it go.
Right. All right. You ready, man?
Yes, we're good.
Right. Thank you for joining me, man. It's been a long time. We had that one discussion. We never got back on live again. And
Yes,
we really should do this more.
we could do this more, especially topics concerning Africa, and
Sure.
our
People,
people need this information out there.
of course, people have been asking about when we're going to do this again, and I just never have. People have been asking about, they really enjoyed that one conversation we did. Um,
Wow.
some people found it, of course, jarring because of the discussion points. Africans don't like to hear that Africans should
Mhm.
rely on Africans, but it's interesting that
Mm.
this discussion today is something that we were talking about back then about Africa dealing with Africans and
True.
trading with Africans and all of
Mhm.
that. It's interesting that the people who didn't like that discussion then, I think some people called us black supremacists. And I remember somebody called us a black supremacist because, black people do not like to hear things like that. We've been trained to always look for everybody else, care about other people first, care about ourselves last. It's something that is ingrained in us because we are very warm people, very kind people. And we have, in essence, put ourselves really on the back end when it comes to economics in the world.
True.
And this discussion today,
Mm.
I'm really excited to have it. Of course, it's based all around this new proposed currency that's supposed to be launching next year called the
Yeah.
ECHO. This is coming out of the ECOWAS. Is it the ECO or the ECHO?
ECHO, as they call
ECHO,
it.
right. So it's coming out of the ECOWAS region, which is the Economic Union of West African States. Am I correct?
Exactly. That's the meaning.
It's 15 states that are proposing now, and this has been proposed since as far back, I think, 2003, and it just kept getting postponed and postponed and postponed. And the new date is 2020, that these people want to launch a single currency that will replace all the other ones, especially the CFA franc. A lot of people have been talking about the CFA franc because that is the last colonial, direct colonial currency in West Africa. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I was a little bit skeptical when I heard about it. So my first question is, okay, first of all, they said they chose the name, and the CFA, which has been there. In West Africa, we have 15 countries, 15 in this union member. And then 9 of them are francophone, actually. 5 are anglophone, and the other one is lusophone. So I asked myself the question: what will happen to the franc CFA now? Because there is already a system like that, an alleged system that the francophone countries were using single currency, and was it easy for them to trade between themselves? That is another myth that we have to debunk again, because the franc CFA, the 9 members country that were using the money, there was no trade between them, no single trade. This money cannot even be convertible, are not convertible. When you travel from Benin to Cameroon or to other places, it was difficult. The French people made it so that these people cannot even trade among themselves. So now that another proposition is on the table that let them replace this money with something else. So I was wondering, I said, what would the French say? Because it's like a swear, it's a power for them to. Somebody asked me this question, say, what do you think about the franc CFA? What is wrong with France, printing this money for this country? After all, there are so many advantages that comes with it. The money is tied to euro, when the euro fluctuates, when the euro, depreciate, anything that affects euro affects the money. And the people can be able to convert easily their money. And it also facilitates, it also encourage foreign investors to invest in Africa. But what is it? When the foreign investors invest, it helps them to repatriate their money easily back to their country, leaving this population, in abject poverty. So many disadvantages that come with this franc CFA. So I asked, what is the position of France? That is the question I started asking myself. What are they thinking about this proposition? Because this thing, first of all, it will take the power away from them. Then the person that asked me that, what is wrong with leaving France printing the money, say, come on, be nice. I say, oh, really? You don't want to understand what is wrong with allowing France to print this money? Why do you? I'm giving you a proposition actually. If it's not wrong for France to print this money, why not allow France? Nigeria will take over the monetary policy of France. We take care of printing your euro for you. What it means, living in another country, handling your financial operation, it's you're surrendering your sovereignty.
Sure.
If you don't understand that, then allow another country to print your money. I say allow France, for instance, to print your money. Or I say it's very simple. Or allow Nigerians to send in their troop to France. Buy places to protect French companies that are in France. That's where he begins to understand the deep psychological effect of that. But it's okay because they are powerful countries and Africans are just mini countries. So it's okay. Let them be there. Let France continue with the power. So it's not about that. It's about our sovereignty. It's about our dignity. It's about our power.
Right.
You can't allow another country to take care of the printing of your money, and then they can be able to decide. Probably, if France decide to do anything, they can just send in a French expatriate down to Africa and just print huge bulk of the money and just give it to him so that he can use it anyhow. It's crazy.
It's like a parent who
Yeah.
gets paid at the end of the month, right? And he has children,
Hmm.
and you give your child an allowance. The mother or the father controls the money and decides how the children must get the money, right? Except the children are 50-year-old grown people who have no business living with their mother and getting allowances from their parents, right?
Yes.
That's what I see. That it's like African countries, these countries, well, since the independence movement in the 60s and all that, that's when they became countries, right? I'm not
Hmm.
talking about African people. I'm talking about the African so-called countries that are there now. A lot of these countries were formed after the independence movement. All the borders were official and all of that. And you have these countries that still, as you said, see nothing wrong, or people with France handling their money. It's as I said, it's adult children allowing their old parent to handle them and give them allowances.
That's true.
You know, but France has been doing it so long that people can't imagine France not doing it. So it's like symbolism. Whereas, like, if France controls your money, France pretty much controls your life.
Hmm.
And people have lived so long with this and that they don't want to change, right? There's an article here from QZ or something, and one guy was talking and was being interviewed about the echo. And let me see if I can find it because I want to share it with you. And he said, you know, this whole thing seems to be coming out of like an attack on the francophone countries because, as I said, it's the last vestige of colonial currency domination.
Mm.
Um, let me make sure I find it. And he was saying it's bizarre that they would want to move away from the echo from the um. Let me make sure I find it because I want to say what he said. I want to make sure I say what he said. 1 second, please. Okay, so this is coming from a man called um, where is it? Something Robertson, and he says for him, it's bizarre that countries who use the French-backed currency will even
Mm.
consider revising their currency policy at all, at all, given the benefits of lower interest rates and currency stability. So he's saying, really, you know, there's a lot of advantages to having the French franc, currency stability, lower interest rates, blase, blase. What do you say about that? He says it's bizarre that they would want to do that, like move away from the franc.
I think it's a legitimate question. It's a legitimate question because one has to be suspicious of such move, of such taking of such step, with considering the advantage that comes with it. But also, there are so many disadvantages. Like we said, it's about their sovereignty. We also think that France, for instance, if China wants to deal with any form of business with any African country, any francophone country, they have to go through France because France control the monetary aspect of all these things. Yes, yes, because that money, the paper, the France CFA has no value. It's useless.
Mm.
It's useless. It's just plenty papers. You see them, they even have 1,000 notes, 10,000 francs CFA. They have that note, useless paper. It becomes only valuable when it's converted to euro. So they have that ability to convert this money. And for you to be able to do that, you have to go through France. And that is why most of their directors, the central banks, you have black people, the faces there, but the people that are there, they have veto power to take all this power away from you. So I think that such question is a legitimate question. It's a question for us to ponder about it. What assurance are we giving to this francophone country? What about the stability that we're
Mm.
going to get it? Of course,
But,
we have other African countries who are independent. They print their money. Countries like Nigeria, Ghana, who are just the neighboring country, they are there They are showing example of that African country can stand on their own. So we are tired of that. It's not all about it's a question of sovereignty. So we have to take our right back. We have to take this sovereignty back. So there's no going back about this. So that question also makes me to imagine: is there any back deal in this? Are the French comfortable with this?
Well,
Because this is like taking the power away from them.
well, he goes on to finish. Let me finish. He says, what's been driving growth and investment in Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal in the last 10 years has been high investment because of low interest rates, which come from a stable currency guaranteed by France. Why jeopardize that and align with countries with less stable currencies like Nigeria and Ghana, and with much higher levels of inflation and interest rates? So the article essentially was saying, let me tell you the name of the article first off. It's called West Africa's Echo: Single Currency Ambition Has a Slim Chance of Success. This was written by an African, right? A man called Yomi Kazim.
Okay.
And essentially, he is very down on the currency. And that's not a bad thing because you need to have different outlooks on this thing, right? And he's talking about essentially saying, it's not possible to launch in 2020 because a lot of these people are not going to meet the financial criteria.
That is true.
Because he's saying, for starters, only 5 of the region's 15 countries, currently meet the single currency's criteria of a budget deficit not higher than 4% and inflation rates of not more than 5%.
And
No,
which country is?
Cape Verde, Ivory Coast, Guinea, Senegal, and Togo.
Okay.
So, and the gentleman's name Robertson was Charlie Robertson. He's the chief global economist at Renaissance Capital.
Okay.
And Yomi goes on and he says, and while ECOWAS say that the integration will be gradual as countries meet the criteria, it's unlikely that a 2020 launch date is feasible at all. Even though the date has been set, there's no significant progress as regards to the design, production, and testing of the currency notes. Remember, this has been put off like 2 or 3 times before. This was proposed back in 2002.
Yes.
This note was to be used in 2003. So they keep putting it off. At which point do you say, you know what, let's just go? Because, you keep waiting and waiting for things to get better and better. People were more heartened when Nigeria, because there were questions if Nigeria would come on. I think Buhari was the last to sign recently.
Yeah.
Why do you think he was reluctant?
He was skeptical about signing into the program, first of all, because France was having the control. Macron made a proposition that Nigeria should join Nigeria should join the France CFA. Actually, he proposed. Yes, he was bold to propose this to Nigeria. He told them that join the France CFA region and take advantage of this money. I say this young man is something else. How dare you tell a country, the most strongest black nation in the world, to join your colonial money? He said that they should. Yes, he was bold. He said that. So I understand the skepticism coming from Nigeria. Currently, right now, let me tell you what's going on. Between Nigeria and Benin, we produce cement in Nigeria. Nigeria is the largest producer of cement now, currently in Africa. Then secondly, South Africa. But we can trade with Benin. The Benin, the Republic of Benin, they buy their cement from China. They are just our neighbor. We share border with them. But trade is impossible between us. They made it so difficult that we cannot trade with each other. So they can get oil, for instance. We produce oil in Nigeria, but they have to get their oil from China and getting their cement there, which is something that is very strange. It's a strange phenomenon because African countries do not intertrade with each other. This is a very strange phenomenon. So bringing in this money will facilitate trade, first of all. And apart from the money, there is another free trade zone proposition they're making right now. In fact, it will open doors to so many things. It will open doors to so many things. And I'm always skeptical about the economic jargons they use whenever they are speaking of country is meeting up with the criteria and all those things. That's for instance, in English, in French, you hear they will tell you that the French money is forte. Forte, that's what they always use. Forte, that is a very strong money. And the word strong might sound like something positive to you, but you don't know what is behind all these ideas. Like I said, if you go back into it, it's about the question of your sovereignty. Sovereignty. I'm posing this question to the guy who wrote this article. Which country is he from, actually?
Yomi Kazim.
Mm.
I don't
Yomi
know.
Kazim. Sounds
Yomi,
American.
let me click on his name. Yomi Kazim is a reporter at Quartz, covering Africa-specific stories on politics, and he graduated from Babcock University with a degree in whatever.
Nigeria.
I don't
Babcock
know.
is Nigerian university.
It doesn't say where he's from. It just gives a
Babcock is a Nigerian university.
Oh, is it? So
Yeah.
maybe he's Nigerian.
It's very possible.
Oh,
So
he's Lagos based.
So he must be a Nigerian. It's very strange, because our education do not empower us to think about our independence. It's about the question of sovereignty. There's nothing you can do about it at all. There's nothing. It doesn't matter the inconvenience that comes with it. First of all, I said, what currency are we going to peg it to?
Right.
The euro or the dollar, in order to be able to understand all these things. So it's the question of sovereignty that is the number one priority. We cannot allow a foreign country to keep printing our money, deciding our fate, deciding how we use it. We are not babies anymore. Don't worry. We have been dealing successfully with each other. We don't even care about the currency. Nigeria can stand alone because all that matters right now in Africa, can we be able to reach our agricultural production? Can we produce food for our people? Then leave the question of currency. Africa is not a very large export market. What do we export? We only export raw materials that is even to our disadvantage. Most of the products being exported out of Africa are raw materials.
Right.
We don't, we not finished goods.
Right.
We export crude oil and import refined oil in Africa, which is of disadvantage for us.
Which is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I remember watching an interview. Was it Paul Kagame or Adolfo? Is it Adolfo from Ghana? Is that his name? Anyway, and they were saying 70% of trade that Africans do is with Europe, not amongst African countries.
Yes.
I remember
and ask yourself what product are they trading with? Cocoa, first of all, cottons, fresh, cottons. We farm them and we export them. We don't use them. Coffee, for instance, we don't use coffee in Africa.
Right.
I've never had coffee in Africa in my life. Although I see Nescafe, which is not an African company, that's sitting in stores. I wasn't even interested in using them. I just see them in little sachets. I never use them. I don't understand why Africans are. Yeah.
It's only a few years ago I really thought about it and I realized cocoa is not an African plant. It's actually South American. But the soil in West Africa grows it so well that I think Ghana or Ivory Coast, one of these countries, is the largest producers of cocoa. But you don't use the product. It's not.
We don't use it.
It's not because it's not an African plant. So you have no culture of using it, right? So I remember, I think it was you who had posted something on Facebook about some chocolate. I think it was Nestle, about child abuses in the cocoa plantation and whatnot. And I said, how is it that these companies are getting the raw cocoa from Africa for nothing? Does Africa have any refining plants? And a guy who posted said, yeah, of course, we have a plant in Ivory Coast. I'm like, so I asked him, where are you from? He's some Belgian guy. I said, so it's not really an African plant then. It's a Belgian plant in Africa. So it's like, and I think Paul Kagame also said that, Africa has this relationship with Europe where for some reason, Africans don't feel like they have the ability to refine anything. It goes up to Europe and he says you sprinkle some magic thing on it and it comes back as refined goods. As if Africans can do it themselves, right? But this is
Yes.
how the European has set up the world since the transatlantic slave trade. People
Mm,
leave Africa,
mm,
go to the West or wherever, or to Europe also.
mm.
Raw goods leave from those, go to Europe. Europe refines everything. They do everything. All the raw goods go to Europe, refine everything, and they sell it back to the rest of the world. And Africans can only be exporters of raw goods and people,
Yeah.
and import all the refined nice things from Europe.
Mm. That's how it has been,
Just
and
doesn't work like that for purpose.
mm,
That's why Europe now controls all the economics of the world because they want it to be like that. You just focus on giving us your best and brightest and give us your raw goods. We'll feed you with your raw goods. We will wash your rice off for you and send it back to you. Don't worry.
yeah. And I asked myself this question: Why? How was it possible that this system was set in place? Then I discovered that it actually went on around 1970s, 80s, when that was a system. That was a year between the 80s, the 70s, and the 80s, when capitalism was changing, was metamorphosing to become something else. Europe was no longer attractive for capital growth, for investment. For the industrial revolution has taken place for a very long time. They have started a lot of things, so it wasn't attractive anymore to start companies in Europe and the Western world in general, in the US I'm talking about. So companies were looking elsewhere for cheaper labor because if they continue with their production in the Western world, they have to pay the workers higher wages, and there's no return in that. So they were looking outward to other countries where they can find cheaper labor, or maybe slaves that can work in their factories and produce them. And then I asked myself, I say, Africa was there with population, with ready people. Why the companies, industries that were looking for cheaper labor choose to go to China? That was the question I asked myself. No country, no company, no industry considered going to Africa.
Mm.
So there were cheap labors there. There were cheap labor in Africa, cheap labor in China, cheap labor in East Asia in general.
Mhm.
But they choose to move their company to China and other
Right.
countries, not Africa. All of them were discouraged to go to Africa. Then I discovered that there were so many factors, that help encourage this. First of all, Africa had the cheap labor, of course, but the companies, there were instability at that epoch, that year in Africa. Most of the countries were in civil crisis because of coup d'etat, because
Yeah.
of coup d'etat that were engineered by the West after
Yes.
after they were engineered by them. Leaders in the 60s, leaders who proposed to leave the monetary system were being assassinated. Patrice Lumumba and
Mhm.
a lot of people like Thomas Sankara, even Gaddafi, that was killed recently in 2011. So many leaders then were being, so many engineered coup d'etat in Africa going on. So there was this instability in Africa that made the political atmosphere not very encouraging for companies to come and, establish their industry there and start profiting from the cheap labor. Africa has always been a source of cheap labor, but it's not always attractive for foreign industries. So we need to ask ourselves, why is this? Then I discovered again that Europe there's something I wrote, and I wrote an article and I called it the orange policy. This orange policy is all about, you know, if you bring in orange into Europe, raw material, raw orange, you will find out that you're allowed, the orange is cheap. There's no tax, there's no tariff,
Mhm.
it's tariff free. You can bring any raw material you want to bring from Africa, it's tariff free. But the moment you pick that orange, process it and package it as orange juice,
Mhm.
it becomes completely difficult for you to bring it into Europe. They give you reasons. They say that it's not up to the standard. They will tell
Standard.
you that it's not up to the European standard of having clean goods to consume and all those things. Then I say, okay, that's interesting. So when those policies were put in place, that you cannot bring refined product, you cannot bring finished product from Africa because there are so much tariff on them, If you're bringing in raw material, of course, orange, of course, pineapple, of course, tomatoes, and all those things, and all sort of exotic fruit from Africa, oh, you're welcome to bring them. In fact, I even saw something recently. It's about the Bene seed. I don't know the scientific name, but it's coming from Africa. But when they bring it here, they process it. They're so in love with it, they process it and sell it back to Africa. A classic example is this cocoa that we're talking about. You bring it, you have all the fine companies here that they change it into so many products, to chocolate and all those things, and fine chocolate in Swiss and all those things, and send it back to Africa to buy them. So why are wearing these companies encouraged to go where the raw products are already in Africa?
Mm.
They,
Mm.
at that epoch, they were looking for laborers. They need people to work cheaply for them. But why weren't they encouraged to go there? Why? Because there are policy in place that will not permit you to go there. Once you go there, you're the only country that was exempted from that. I discovered later that it was China. When they joined this, and they joined this World Trade Organization lately. Actually, it was around 2001.
Yeah, WTO, right?
Yes.
Right.
So then I thought that these policies were in place already to discourage companies, and already the African political atmosphere wasn't favorable. Wasn't encouraging at all for them to go. So these are some of the factors, these are some of the elements that made companies to not even consider Africa completely. So today we can say, okay, that era is gone. Will the African countries now start producing? Well, of course, we want those position. Yes.
Well, the question I would ask, about, because I remember early on you spoke about the fact that Nigeria somehow doesn't sell cement to
Mhm. Benin.
Benin when Nigeria has a place called Benin City. I don't understand, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to show you how close these places are,
Mhm.
right? All these borders are colonial borders.
Of
So
course.
the issue for me, and I've heard them speak about the fact that they want to break down these economic barriers, these borders and whatnot, and they want to
Mhm.
trade amongst themselves. There's a video here that I wanted to show you, but I don't know if it's gonna play on this, but I'll get it up later. It's the same president of Ghana. He was in some
Okay.
symposium with Macron, and for some reason these two are always together. I'm not a fan of Macron. I think he's a neo-colonialist. He just smiles better. He's a
Mhm.
neo-colonialist. Um, he's made it no secret that he wants to encourage the French language and, as you said, the French France.
Culture.
He has made no secret.
Mhm.
So these two again are in another symposium. I'm not sure why Ghana and France keep having these, because Ghana was not a French colony, so I don't understand.
Yeah.
Right?
Something
Anyway,
strange. Yeah.
it's very true. These two are always together. But anyway, and the Ghanaian president, he was talking about that Africans have to do this themselves. Nobody's coming to help us. Nobody's going to do anything for us. We have to do it ourselves.
Mhm.
Now, Pan-Africanists have been espousing this since Pan-Africanism was even talked about back in the probably 1800s. That
Yeah.
black people only have black people to rely on,
Mhm.
right? We have a way where we seem to pick up things very late. We've been saying this for a long, long, long time that nobody's coming to save African people. Nobody.
Yes.
And I'm glad he said so. I've been critical of him because, of course, his decision to build this gigantic cathedral in Ghana. I've been very critical. But anyway,
Mm.
he said the right thing. But what I'm saying is, how do they go about? Because we know African people can be very ticklish when it comes to their sovereignty, especially when it comes to African. They don't
Mhm.
mind giving up their sovereignty to a white man,
Yes.
but they would feel funny if, because I saw another article where people were, oh, there are fears that Nigeria will dominate the echo because
Mhm.
Nigeria, of course, is the biggest economy,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
But my thing is, you have an issue if Nigeria dominates whatever, but you don't have an issue if France dominates you. So where is this coming from? Are Africans going to be able to look at another African and be fine? Because we have seen nonsense tribal politics and nonsense country politics flare up
Mhm.
in other African countries where they start getting these xenophobic rhetoric and attacks and all of this.
Yes.
How is this going to look? Because I mean, an economically borderless Africa, well, West
Mhm.
Africa,
Yes.
How are people going to receive if people say Nigeria is flooding their markets with cement? Are people going to accept their position?
Mm.
Okay, because I was speaking to a brother from Benin, actually.
Mm-hmm.
This is the brother who is going to initiate me into Vodun, by the way. Just letting you know,
Okay.
right? We're speaking to him, right? And I was asking him if there are any connections in the Benin to get like raw products, like cocoa butters and things like that, like, whatever. Because people here sell those things. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to go through an Indian to get an African product,
Yeah.
right? And he was saying, well, cocoa is not sold, is not grown in Benin, it's grown in maybe Togo or Nigeria. And you have to get it
Mm.
from there. So my thing is something like that, where, okay, one country produces something, the other does
Mm.
not. Will one country accept that, okay, I will buy all of my cement from Nigeria now, and Nigeria also produces pretty much everything. So will Nigeria in turn buy something specifically or buy a set quota of goods from a different country, guaranteed to make this work? Because that's what you have to do. You have to
Yes.
say, look, I'm going to purchase this from you every single year,
Mm.
guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will say, because it happens in the Caribbean, here in these
Mm.
little islands, that, oh, why are we buying this from this country? We can make it ourselves. But people miss the point. You have to support your neighbor,
Yes,
no
that's
matter
true.
what. You have to support the economy just like you want them to support yours.
Mm.
So if Benin says we're gonna buy all our cement from Nigeria, will
Mm-hmm.
Nigeria in turn purchase whatever product Benin exports into Nigeria to support them in turn? Do you see that happening?
Yes, the irony is that, Nigeria is not even exporting cement to some of these countries. What the person in charge actually is Dangote. I don't know if you ever heard of
Yeah,
Dangote.
yeah, sure.
He established almost cement processing companies like in 23 African countries. He has businesses all over. So instead of producing this product in Nigeria, he said, no, some of these countries, they have limestones. If you go to Senegal, there are limestones there. If you go to all these countries, they have raw materials to be processed. So why pick all the raw materials in Nigeria,
Hmm.
and then there are raw materials, they work, take advantage of it, go and establish industries there
Right.
and give job to the locals. That's what he did. He now he has companies all over Africa. The last attempt he did was he wanted to buy off a cement plant in South Africa. It was one of the oldest cement plant. I'm not religious, but I was praying that he got that plant off. That plant is like, it was built in 1900.
Yeah.
It's a colonial plant. So the Africans actually owned that plant. It was one of the British stuff. This all started. It was one of the oldest. So Dangote is actually taking them out of business because he was bringing cheap cement from Nigeria.
Mhm.
The raw materials were so readily available, good quality cement, that if that continues, it will drive them out of business. So they were no longer prospering. Their business, they started having, problem. They proposed selling it off, So some European company wanted to buy it off, but they refuse because they know that it's not all about selling the company off, but it's a legacy. It's about
Right.
having power and control over the country. What they have to do now is to regulate it and take Dangote away from bringing in, cheap cement into South Africa to kill their market. So what Dangote actually did was that since this country are not allowing him to export Nigerian cement to their country, and they also have raw materials there, why not go there and start industries? He went to some countries, he faced difficulties. Some of them, they had laws that they were trying to prevent him from starting it. So it's a very strange thing. So starting businesses with Africans, and right now, I want to speak to people that are pessimistic about the future of Africa. I was pessimistic too, but I just discovered something recently that is happening in Nigeria. People might not take notice of it. When they're speaking of growth in other African countries, they don't mention Nigeria. But Nigeria will take the world by surprise because there are strategic companies growing on right now in Nigeria that I'm very sure that those things will take. I'm speaking because there are private sectors that these individuals took loans, billions of loans from banks to start business. So you know that you have to pay the loan back. You're not going to fail to do that. Dangote is currently building one of the largest single chain refinery in the world. that will refine oil with a quality of Euro 5. In Africa, we use Euro 3, one of the lowest quality, and it causes pollution all the time. But this is a high quality product that is going to produce. And there are 5 products that are going to be produced. They're going to produce jet fuel. We usually buy them from, we usually import them, all the entire African countries, but the Dangote production will suffice the entire continent of Africa. He can supply the rest of the country. So all these countries, now that the single currency is being proposed, we can be able to buy these things among ourselves. Dangote will supply them with jet fuel. Those countries that in the aviation industry will supply them. So, and again, he's going to produce fertilizer. Fertilizer, every country, your topography, also your soil quality. It's not any form of fertilizer that you apply to any soil you see. The fertilizer you're applying has to adapt to the chemical components in those soil. So Dangote now he studies some of those African soil and see which fertilizer production will be okay. Are we going to use urea, ammonia, what sort of chemicals is okay for this land, because we import fertilizers from Europe and some other foreign countries and apply them, and they leave in residue that end up being toxic to our waters and all those things. So now he went into those production. So Africans, we need to give ourselves chances. You need to give ourselves this chance to be able to seize this opportunity. I was saying that Nigeria, the rest of the country should be merged together even. Let it be one. I told a friend, I said, I don't mind all these Benin, all these Cameroonians to go into Nigeria, travel and settle there as a population. It's our country. The continent belongs to us. Don't close the border against them. It should be open. Do this business among ourselves. So I'm speaking about the strategic company in Nigeria that are developing currently, right? And there's a lady, I don't know, maybe you don't know about her. Her name is Amy Jadesimi.
No.
She started an offshore drilling company. This is a young lady who schooled in the US. She worked with Goldman Sachs in the past, decided to leave the company, went back to Nigeria, took over her father's company. A young lady, I tell you, she's very bold. So she started all this, and she says she wants to empower women. So now she started a logistics hub in Africa that is one of the largest logistic hub right now. It's not just taking care of Nigeria, but it's going to take care of West Africa entirely. So you have a situation whereby all these large cargoes that are coming into West Africa, they can come and offload there. If they have any problem, they can be decoupled, recoupled there. Usually, when we have such problem, those ships are being moved to South Africa to be fixed there. But right now, we have a place in Western Africa, and it's located in Nigeria. We have the opportunity to do all these things ourselves. So you can have the largest cargo in Nigeria. These things can be done there. So no matter how large the material you bring in can be coupled and decoupled there. So she started all these things. So West Africa need to take advantage of all these things, So we need to encourage this intertrade between ourselves. And this Dangote production, again, the one that is doing it's going on in Nigeria right now. It's going to produce tons, 12,000 megas of electricity in Nigeria, just for Nigeria alone. Do you know that will supply electricity to Benin Republic?
No.
Nigerian private companies supply electricity to Benin Republic. Will supply electricity even to Ghana.
Wow.
To Nigeria Republic. These are private companies because it wasn't profitable for them in Nigeria. Since it's not profitable for them in Nigeria, they decide to export to other countries. And the funniest thing is that those countries have stable electricity than Nigeria. But Nigeria is supplying their electricity. That is the irony. Nigeria is supplying them. If you go to Nigeria Republic, you go to Cameroon, you go to Chad, you go to Ghana itself, we are supplying them. So our private companies are supplying the electricity, but we have a problem with electricity in our own country.
Let me see if you can hear this video, okay? I'm gonna play this video for you.
Okay.
I hope I don't get a strike for this, but we'll see. Let me close this window on Mr. Yomi Kazim, your fellow Nigerian. Mr. Yomi Kazim. Let me see. Share video, screen share.
Yomi. Okay, the name is Yomi.
Let me see.
Simple example.
Can you hear this?
I can hear you.
The Chinese diaspora is supposed to be some 16 million people.
Are you seeing the screen?
Yes.
Are you hearing it?
Yes, you can enlarge it.
In the world. They're saying that of the 52 billion foreign investment that went into China in the 80s and 90s that transformed China into what it is today, the manufacturing hub of the world, 50% of that, 26%, came from the Chinese overseas community. And that development of China that has taken place has changed the status and the position of Chinese all over the world. So I want you to take those statistics very seriously, because that is the transformative connection that we want to make with the African diaspora.
So that was President Addo.
Yes. Akufo.
All right. So you heard what he said?
Yes.
So he was talking about in that segment about the role the Chinese diaspora played from the 80s, 90s to now. What I've told people is that the Chinese have played a long game for a long time. What they do, they don't play the game just for now. They plant seeds that they themselves will not see grow. They plant seeds for 2, 3, 4 generations down the road. So he's talking about the Chinese diaspora from since the 1980s. The Chinese are currently exporting people to other, even to the Caribbean. They're starting businesses, they're starting all these things, and they send back their money to China, right?
Yes.
And the Chinese are seeding the world with people who are going to support their own economies. So that's the diaspora. My question to that would be to the president. Who do you consider to be diaspora? Is it just continental Africans on vacation, or everybody else? I'll address. He'll probably address that later on in the next video I'm going to show. But what I'm saying is that Africans are all over the world.
That's
Continental
true.
Africans, not just ones like me who are descendants of people who were enslaved. I'm talking about recent immigrants, people who have left just recently, maybe 1 generation or 2 generations. Why aren't African countries maybe giving them, like China, maybe say, look, I give you some money, you can start a business. All you have to do is pay it back. Because that's what China is doing. He said 50% of 52 billion came from the diaspora from China. What's stopping African? Because China was not always this rich. There was a time when China was struggling around the 80s and these times. There was a time when they were not this powerful. But they made the decision to plant seeds around the world. Why are we not seeing African nations do the same? And do you think it's a good idea?
I must commend Akufo, because this proposition is very important, and I understand your concern why Africa need to link up with the diaspora. John Henry Clark said this. He said that before any black man will be respected all over the world, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you are African American or you're from the Caribbean or anywhere. It doesn't matter your location. He said before you will be respected, he said your respect depends on the growth of Africa.
Well, let me play this other part for you before we go on about that same point.
Okay.
I'll play it for you. Let me get the screen sharing back up.
The status in France and barriers in France. But there's one thing that all of you should remember, and I hope that you will associate this with me. The destiny of all black people in the world, wherever they are, is bound up with Africa. Let me repeat that. The destiny of all black people in the world is bound up with Africa. And performing Africa elevates the status of all black people around the world. And non-performing Africa continues the situation where black people around the world are living.
You hear what he said?
Yes, that's a powerful statement.
Go ahead, sorry.
John Henry Clark first said that. I know you're a student,
Sure.
He first made that statement. He said, and which is true, which is true. What he's saying is true. The reason why I commend him, Akufo, is because of his constant messages about linking up with the diaspora.
You know, he
You
was over
know,
here recently. He was here. He was in the Caribbean.
you see, that is very important.
He was in the
Very,
Caribbean.
very important. Because all black men everywhere, you should feel at home in Africa. You should be welcome. You should feel, I was expecting Nigeria to take up that role of inviting, you know, black people all over the world, tell Americans to come in, invest in Nigeria, give them home. If not even build a village for them and make it secure for them so that all the brilliant ones with investment can come into the country to take opportunity. So, like he said, the destiny of every black man is tied to Africa. The day that Africa will grow and become something, that is when those that when I hear our people complaining of racism and why we've been looked down upon, I don't blame any foreigner. I blame ourselves because you can demand for respect. You have to earn it. The day you start producing jets, the day you start producing, satellite and all this rocket and everything, the day you start feeding yourself, the day you respect yourself, that is when people start respecting you. Just like the Chinese. The people were looking down on the Chinese,
Right.
poor country, but they were, taken unaware. The Chinese started striving. They worked so hard for themselves. All of a sudden, they command respect by force. Now the world has to reckon. In fact, the entire Western world, we were sleeping when China was overtaking France, which was overtaking Britain. Their economy was growing so fast, to its 11 trillion economy now.
They used to call China the sick man of Asia.
Uh-huh.
Japan used to dominate them. I mean, people used to just, whatever. China was nothing, right? But what I'm saying is that by his statement like that, no, I get that there are two different types of diaspora, us and a continental who just left willingly, right? There's two different types. What you said about appealing to, Africans over here is interesting. There's a lot of Africans, especially athletes, entertainers, who have money, but they find themselves investing in Europe and these
Exactly.
places, which is strange because you see a lot of white athletes come to Africa. Oh, we're digging wells, we're doing this, we're doing that. Almost all of those efforts are white people. Why aren't the African leaders appealing back over here? Say, look, if you come back home, come back to Africa, you invest, we will make life a bit easier for you to come back over here. Bring your money that you would put into Europe because you want to buy some building in Europe somewhere. Bring that money and invest that money here.
In Africa.
I think the reason why, especially in America, you have a lot of these anti-African sentiments is because the African leaders have not reached back out any meaningful effort to reconnect with the diaspora. So you have a lot of people who have this resentment. And because the leaders are not reaching back across, say, look, come back. You understand? Take your money, whatever you have, and come, because a lot of people have skills. They can't find, whatever avenues to work in America or in the Caribbean remember, there's more Africans outside of the continent in Brazil than anywhere else. African, people who are just plainly African. It's the second largest place other than Africa that has all these black people. That's in South America. So you have these people who have skills or who want to do something, who have nowhere to go. They feel unsafe over here. In the case of America or Brazil, where you have clearly white supremacist leaders who are trying to kill them.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yes. The two things very important here. First of all, an African American is safer in Africa than in the US. They have to understand this. but the media have brainwashed them so badly about Africa that they are not interested in going to the continent. The classic example you just gave is about the white athlete going to Africa. I was seated in the cities a few days ago when a white guy met me and told me, please, would you like to make a contribution? I'm trying to work on a project. I want to go to Africa. I sat him down and lectured him. I said, the light you're using in France, this ODF you're using here, you know where the uranium is coming from? He said, no. I said, where it's coming from? Niger. He looked at me and said, okay. I say, you can't help Africa. You can't help Africa. The only way you can do is to be responsible, is to know your history and to respect these people who are not considered them as case of charity. We spoke at length and he understood what was going on. So linking up with the African diaspora, like you said, there are two types of diasporas: the Africans, the real Africans. When I say the real Africans who left the continent when you're traveling, I don't see that as a very important factor to consider. I see all Black people everywhere as Africans. I want them to feel at home. I want them to visit back Africa. I want them to invest in Africa. And there are two ways we can do this. Two ways, very important. First, there is a political step which Nana is taking. This political gesture he's making, the statement he's making is very important. I want to tell you about an event that happened. That was 2018, 2017. The Oba of the Yorubas traveled to the US. He made a grand gesture. He made a very bold gesture. He told the African Americans that he's their king. He told them, even though I'm not his big fan, he said Jesus Christ is his father. I was angry about that. But I discovered that it was just for politics because the man is a very deep, charismatic man, So he went to the US. He was garbed, with the king regalia. He walked, he was being, honored, and he went to Brazil and told him that, look, I'm the king of Black people all over the world. Such gesture appeals to the spiritual mind of the Black people the way they are. It brings you back to the spiritual connection. It's symbolic, it's cultural. A Black man, you can never identify with the European culture no matter where you are. You can never. But you see, you can appeal. The African culture is so appealing through music. I first proposed that our musicians should collapse. That was something I said, if I were to do this, if I were to have the opportunity, I will have because Nigeria is the current ambassador of Afrobeat right now. And the musicians are doing so well. If you listen to your songs, you'll see that they're representing Black women so well.
No, Afrobeat has started coming over. Like, I'm hearing more and more Afrobeat on my radio here nowadays. I've never heard it before. It's become so popular. A lot of artists over here are also using that style now in the music. Right.
You see, I observed the growth of the Nigerian music industry. I remember that our music industry, before you can sell, in the past, we used to play African American music, this Tupac, all these rap songs. Now I don't hear them anymore. I don't know, there's a revolution going on gradually, a silent revolution that is going on that nobody's understanding where this thing is coming from. It actually comes from the demand of the people. When you go to in the past, when you go to anywhere you see African video, all this Afrobeat, and they use light-skinned models and white ladies in it, you see comment is so negative. People be like, why don't you represent Black men? Why don't you? So the musicians consciously started taking note of all these things. Now, any movie production, any video production they want to do, they use Black models, they use Afrocentric features, they use Afrocentric style. And the people that come to watch, they appreciate it a lot, So now, the revolution is going on slowly, gradually. I said, link up with this African. I said, if I will have the opportunity, I will have Rihanna sit down. I'll have Beyonce, Jay-Z, all those big musicians, artists, and gab them in African attire. It's symbolic. Doing that, we strike a very strong image in the heart of the African Americans there and people all over the world. So bring that spiritual connection, that cultural appeal to them. When Black Panther came out, people were like, what is it? I don't see. It doesn't matter if it's written by white man or whatever it is. But when people watched it, the culture is that the African American, they see themselves in it. They saw themselves in it. This is Africa. This is our culture. This is us. That's the spirituality. So two
One
ways.
thing I want y'all to stop exporting is Nollywood movies. I don't like Nollywood movies.
No, 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 no. Nollywood movies is a very bad representation of the African culture.
But people
It's so
over here
bad.
love them. They love those movies. I can't stand the movies. Oh
I
God.
can't stand them either. It's so poorly produced, and the concept, the ideas of bringing women down, and the ideas,
Yes,
I
but
it's
the question is the echo. How does the echo, in terms of the diaspora, how would it make a diasporan feel to see Africa finally embracing so-called Pan-African sensibilities, things that were proposed years ago? How do you think that would encourage the diaspora? I'm talking diaspora like us.
yes, it's taking time actually. Africa, we're so late in development, and it's the rest of the world is getting impatient with us because everybody's catching up, but we're growing so slowly. The rest of the world are growing quickly, but we're still back. We're still in the 15th century, we're still in the 16th century, some of the African countries. So the African now, I think, to answer your question, I think everything will it will take shape eventually. I think there will come up as a moment where all the African countries will be developed. That I'm pessimistic to that extent because the way things are going on slowly and gradually. And I'm also observing some decline in the Western world, not just demographically, but culturally, a cultural decadence. You would think that Europe or the Western world is a perfect world. I will give you an example of what's happening right now in Europe. Last week, there was an announcement by the Deutsche Bank. They are going to lay off 18,000 employees.
Yes.
What's going on? If their monetary system is so perfect, why are they laying off their people? We are trying to copy them, but their system is falling apart in so many ways. Democracy that they so loved, most of the things that they invented is turning back against them. But I'm seeing the mother Africa continent is growing slowly. It's very slow. That is why some of us are not happy and keep hammering. But the African diaspora need to understand this, that you need to come back home, invest. And this echo, I'm completely optimistic about it. It's the first step to progress.
I think the echo is useful because, especially in terms of breaking down barriers between, economic borders,
Yes,
right? If I, as a diaspora, come back to Africa, I would prefer that I don't have to use 10 different
correct.
currencies.
It's
I
true. Yeah.
would prefer that. I just want to use, because for me, where I live, we use between I think it's 9 countries in the OECS. The OECS is the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States.
Okay.
Of a lot of small islands, and I'll tell you the history of this and why it relates to the ECOWAS agreement. After, back in the 50s or so, they had proposed something called a West Indies Federation,
Okay.
which was going to group all of these small islands in the Caribbean, make them one country, right? They're supposed to make it one country. That didn't go anywhere because after a while, you started seeing the insularities of these individual countries, especially larger countries, come out. And they said the small islands, like my country, is like 68 square miles, 68 miles only, and our sister island is 36 square miles. So we're small countries. And at that time, some countries were doing better than some, right? Some economies were fab. They had oil. Well, they have oil. They have bauxite. They have all these raw materials. Jamaica and Trinidad. These are the two most, and Guyana, sorry. And some of these countries were much more developed than the small islands. And they could not fathom that they would have to be on equal footing with these islands. So it was like they were offended that they wanted, so they wanted to have all the control and whatnot. And the West Indies Federation broke up because of that. That went nowhere. It lasted like maybe 2 years, and that was it. We now see it as a mistake. We've been trying to catch up since then. We formed all these smaller organizations, but the one that my country is involved in, the OECS, ironically, the same small islands that they did not want are now have the strongest currency.
Ooh.
Right? So if we had stuck together back then and not treated each other like we were different, this is a country filled with mostly African people, all these islands, 90% African people. But you had the elite in some of these islands who just refused. So, you know, these countries will drag down your countries. And I'm seeing some of the same comments about the echo that some of the less developed countries will drag the larger countries like Nigeria and Ghana, you know. So what I'm watching is a very ticklish time in the history of West Africa. What will you choose? Will you choose to weather the hardships together, or will you look at another country as a weight around your neck? This is important. These countries have to make a decision. It's not going to be easy. Some countries will need an extra push, but you have to weather that storm because a lot of other nations in the world do not want this to happen.
That's true.
What's your comment on that?
You made a very important point. I would like to repeat it. You said you would love to see the African diaspora. When I say African diaspora, I mean black men everywhere, whether you're from the Caribbean, everywhere. Go back to Africa and use one single currency when they want to travel. When you want to visit Nigeria, you use single currency. You go to Ghana, you use single currency. You shouldn't have to go through the stress of converting the currency every single time. You should be able to buy the same product you buy here, the same product you buy in other places, which is very important. You know, only these factors and only this factor alone should encourage us to take on this proposition. And the example you just gave now is true. We're seeing a lot of skepticism coming up from Africa. Some of them are skeptical about it, but I don't think we should worry much about it. We will weather the storm together. No matter the hardship, even if these people try to infiltrate the system, they try to manipulate it to take advantage of it, I think things will work out itself. You know, I'm just being optimistic here. I don't think we should doubt ourselves. I think we have to try because the system that we've been trying is not working anymore. We have to try new things. You know, we can't just remain stagnant and not evolve.
Right.
The old system is not functioning. So we have to try new things. And trying new things means proposing this money. And we have to try it, whether it works or not. And we keep trying. So people can come into the continent for tourism. Now, there's another thing you told me about the East African communities that are uniting right now too.
Yeah.
You know, with Rwanda leading the movement.
Yeah.
And they are trying to work on the own currency too. They have already developed an economic bloc.
Wait. Before you go any further, let me play this video.
Okay.
Let me share my screen.
You do within your systems in the political arena to begin to energize processes. One might ask, for example, here in the East African region, what are we doing to ensure that in this region we think as one? I fly from Nairobi 1 hour, 5 minutes, and I now have to grapple with Tanzanian shilling. My Kenyan shilling becomes suddenly useless. I leave Tanzania, I go to Burundi, I grapple with the Burundian franc. I leave Burundi, I grapple with the French, with the Rwandese franc. I go to Uganda, I'm grappling with the Ugandan shilling. I move upstairs, I'm dealing with the pound. I move to Angola, I'm dealing with the kwanza. 55, almost 50 currencies, which are effectively useless. Because even the leaders don't believe in them. When the Sudanese head of state is arrested and they search his house, you don't find the Sudanese pound. You find the American dollar and you find the euro. We also don't have faith in our own currencies. And our currencies are going to remain weak as long as we are not united. So in the East African region, what can we do?
So that was PLO Lumumba. You saw the video?
Yes.
So that's what we were talking about. These currencies that are blocking up the entire process.
Yes, so we need a single currency in that country. And to our leaders who are fond of all these euro and dollars, they're foolish actually. They're foolish because I ask, why don't you keep your money as gold? Why don't you pick those dollars and buy gold? Keep them.
But then, but my thing is, a lot of these countries, as you said, with the uranium, France don't have any. So France's currency is backed by other people's goods.
Exactly.
Right? So why is it that my currency is poor when the goods are mine? The raw materials is mine. Why is my money less valuable? I don't understand. So you were saying about the East African trading bloc. Go ahead.
Yes, the East African they also have to develop this system because tourism in the East African is very attractive right now. You have the Kenya, you have the Rwanda, you have the Uganda. People are like right now in Rwanda, people travel to visit the mountain gorilla. In Uganda, when you visit Uganda, you pay $500 to go see the mountain gorilla. But when you go to Rwanda, you pay $1,500 to see the mountain gorilla. Why? Because Rwanda is becoming more secure for people to travel to visit. So even Oprah Winfrey, a lot of stars, are going there to invest. A lot of them, they are going to invest. So it's very important that region adopt that single currency. Like what he said is very true. I'm not a very big fan of Lumumba because I consider him as someone who gives beautiful rhetorics. I'm not a fan of rhetorics. I just want people that will work. We're tired of hearing discourse and having conferences and talking and not doing anything. He is going around, waking people up and saying all sorts of things. I'm tired of all those speeches. But what he said is a very beautiful proposition. Single currency for the region is very important. It will encourage the tourism sector. So people need to see all these things.
But I also saw another article that the East African community is actually planning the single currency in 2023. So we're seeing these movements in Africa, as I call it, this neo-African unity movement, where slowly, and I just saw the Democratic Republic of the Congo join East African bloc. But my issue sometimes is that some of these countries have so much internal issues that it threatens to sometimes bring, like in Uganda, for instance, you have a man who is taxing social media, right? I mean, these are the things sometimes in some countries that I really have challenges with. It will not affect the currency, but it shows sometimes that some of these leaders cannot go into the next. It's like when in the Bible, Moses never saw the promised land. He was the one to lead them out.
Yes.
But he was not allowed to go into the promised land. He died right after. In my opinion, some of these leaders are going to have to die.
That's true. I agree with you. They will have.
They cannot go in. They're going to have to be the ones to sign the documents to say, yes, new currency, yes, no borders, but they cannot be allowed to move into the new dispensation.
You see, the most important agreement that is coming up in Africa is the economic agreement. Very important. Even though we don't have political unity, but economic agreement is very important. Free trade among ourselves is very important.
Right.
We need to encourage this. Very, very important. So what I'm seeing actually is a slow, evolution in our economic sector. It's taking place, but it's very slow. I want to speak about Europe. When the Europeans thought of economic integration, it was forced through media propaganda, through a lot of things. They rushed everything. It was so quick. But the system they fixed is disintegrating now. A lot of European nations are saying we want to quit, we don't want this agreement anymore. It's stifling them. It's
Right.
choking them. It's
See,
choking them on.
you saw that with the whole Brexit fiasco,
Yeah.
which is still ongoing. I don't know what's up with these people. If they're leaving, leave. But yeah, if these people signed on and they know they don't want this no more. They don't want to be involved in this whole Euro arrangement where you telling me what to do. But you know, a lot of these things, in my opinion anyway, a lot of things in Africa, Africa is in its infancy in those discussions. So look at what these people did wrong and don't do that. That's all.
Yes.
You know, don't do that. But I need to see, in terms of the echo, I need to see these people put a special emphasis on, I guess, as I said before, reaching back across and trying to, well, the recent emigrants of Africa, we didn't really deal with the question. I want to know, will countries or will African leaders support, say you're in France right now? Say if you want to set up a business in France, wherever you are, would your government support your business if you agree to send back a certain percentage of your monies back to the economy, directly back?
That's a very good question.
That is what
There,
China has done. China,
yeah.
I will fund your business. Just agree to send back a guaranteed percentage back to the treasury, and you can do whatever you want.
The Chinese are very smart. They give loans to their people to start business all over the world. And you know, one thing they're trying to do right now, I don't know if you share this opinion with me, there's a power transition right now that is going on all over the world between China and the West. The Chinese people, they project their program in a very long term. You know, it's not just to start right now. You know, this Belt and Road initiative that they are proposing is going to cripple the West. They propose something because right now they discover that China has overcapacity in construction that is beyond their borders now. They cannot keep their construction within the borders of China. So they have to take their construction to the world. So they propose building railways and bridges and roads and everywhere. What people don't know is that they're actually exporting jobs. They're actually taking jobs. They are actually giving their people opportunity to continue working for the next hundreds of years.
Sure.
That project that they propose is something that will keep their company alive. First of all, they are proposing that Belt and Road Initiative. The cement that they are going to use will be coming from China. All the raw materials involved is not from the local countries. Apart from some of the labors too, they even use Chinese people for that. So it's a very smart project. They don't care because the West was so comfortable when they colonized the rest of the world. They were so comfortable, they don't care about developing. If the West were smart, they would have continued with construction because they will be giving labor to their people. They will be giving a job opportunity to their people. But they were so comfortable with their system that, allow them, they will grow eventually. But the Chinese are taking advantage of this opportunity right now. They are proposing this project and they are giving labor to their people. There are companies that are producing who have where to supply, what to use, the raw materials they're collecting to refine them. They'll be able to use. This African growth is very slow, very, very slow. I thought I would be very skeptical about this whole eco currency, but talking to you eventually now, I'm beginning to convince myself that it's a very good project, I think.
I think it's if just only for the symbolism alone, that France no longer prints my money. And you know what? At some point, you have to deal with what comes. Even if when you have adversity, it breeds strong alliances. It really tests to see who's with you and who's not. Because if we're all in this thing together and we have to make this work, then we have to make it work.
That's true.
Otherwise, we all fail. And Nigeria signing on is a good thing. Even though I know in Nigeria there's this, there's the back and forth of separatist movements and whatnot and all of that. Nigeria signing on is a good thing. Because Nigeria is saying, I am throwing my lot in with you. If you fail, I also put myself in a problem, because then I have to go back to the naira or whatever. Right? So Nigeria signing on is saying we're all in this together. Yes, I have the biggest economy, but in the initial stages, we're all together. We have to make it. We have to make it work. We have to make it work. There's absolutely no reason, as you said, why Benin is not doing business with Nigeria on a more regular basis. When my friend, my contact in Benin tells me he's going to Togo and then into Nigeria to do business, right? He makes it sound like so easy, like he just flies in, does business, and come back. So when you're telling me that Benin doesn't buy such and such from Nigeria because they buy from China, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Why is China coming from all the way, selling you something that another African country right next to you is selling? The point.
Because it's even cheaper coming from China. They made it easy. They made it possible. And the funny thing is that these francophone countries trading with among themselves. For instance, in communication, you're living Benin, you're going to Cameroon. You can't use the same phone. The roaming is even problematic. You have to take another SIM card. All those things. There is a connected region. They cannot do all these things among themselves. Most of the goods that are coming from Benin are actually smuggled from the Republic of. They're into Nigeria are being smuggled. We don't have trade among ourselves. We don't. Most of the things that are coming here are smuggled. They have to smuggle them. They have to follow through illegal borders to bring them in. So when you hear them talking about business, always like that. There is nothing. And there's another factor that is growing, that is becoming a very huge problem now in West African coast. The Congo basin. The Chinese are coming to fish there.
Yes.
They're fishing in large scale. They're killing our market. They come, they fish. Nobody control them. There's no control. And the Western countries are coming to dump refuse. They are coming to dump some,
Yes.
China currently banned the importation of recycled materials now. They no longer recycle. When the industry were growing, they needed those raw materials. They needed to process them and recycle them and fix them. Now they ban the importation of all those things.
So they don't need that
So
no more.
France is in trouble. The UK is in trouble. The UK, I think they have 10 years to build, an industry that can be able, company, that can be able to recycle some of those products. They're in trouble. Even the US are in trouble. The Australians, the Canadians are in trouble. Now they are left with so many big, even recently, Canada was in trouble with the Philippines.
That is
They,
contained trash.
they have to take back their trash, all those things. So a lot of things, we're seeing the problem coming up, but some of these countries are going to dump their, all these things in Africa, the coast. And
the West, you see, they grew comfortable because there was a certain world order that these less developed countries would take our trash. As you said, China said, no problem, we'll take your trash and we'll build our economies on that. No problem. We'll do all the recycling. We'll learn your technology. We'll learn all of that. So, it's a bad thing, but if African leaders were thinking back then, they could have said, you know what, no problem. We'll build recycling centers. We'll build recycling centers. And we'll take your stuff. We'll give our people jobs, but we'll also learn how to do certain things and build upon that. But right now, if they come with the trash, they'll just dump them.
Yes.
You just dump them.
We don't have even Nigeria was exporting their trash to China. So Nigeria is in trouble right now. Yes. We're exporting bottles and exporting shoes and all sorts of things. You were exchanging them for needles. I remember, they will ask you to produce some valuable trash and some used clothes and all those things.
But isn't this an awesome opportunity then also? Say, look, but then you need to ramp up really fast. But tell the Chinese to tell you how to do recycling then.
Our people can start some of these companies themselves. That is where investment comes in from the African diaspora. You can go back to Africa if you have an expertise on this and start up a company for yourself to make money. The African Americans should ask themselves, why is Dangote making huge money in Africa if there's no money opportunity there? He's in dollars,
But
That man.
Easy, like is it easy for a diasporan to come back to Africa and get citizenship or the right to function? Because to me, if I'm running this country where I'm at, which is a largely African country, I would make it, I think I would try and make it easier for an African to come in here, because sometimes you have to think like that. You have to think and say, you know what, I want my own people here, people that look like me. This is why when Donald Trump made his comment that he wants people from places like Norway to come to America, right? People were mad, but I was like, why are you mad? He wants people that looks like him.
Yes, yes, yes.
Right? So why
Yes.
in the hell wouldn't I want people with the requisite skills who look like me come to my country and do this? What's this? Why are we making it harder? Because I mean, Nigeria, I mean, exports some of the smartest people in the world, doctors and all these people and whatnot, and they end up staying wherever they are. They don't come back.
They don't come back.
Like I remember, I was watching, was it Dinah's Amir show, and he was interviewing a Nigerian, and I think she said that Nigerians, is it true that Nigerians cannot come back to vote in elections? Is that true? That's true?
No, we can't vote. The moment you renounce your citizenship, you can't vote.
Oh, because she was saying like you can't really come back either to vote or run for elections or some craziness. I don't know. I don't know what it was. But she
Yeah, there are services that you can do in Nigeria. For instance, if you have NYC certificate, you can run for election for but those ones that don't have that because there was a Nigerian minister of finance that designed recently. They call her Kemi. She schooled in the UK and grew up there, went back to Nigeria, and she was elected Minister of Finance, and all of a sudden they discovered she doesn't have anyone, but she has the expertise to lead that office. It's such a very useless requirement. They asked her to resign because she doesn't have the certificate. Now they're even questioning the president if people also have an NYC certificate. So there's a system in place that is not encouraging them a lot to do all these things.
Well, anyway, Mr. Magaji, I want to thank you for your conversation today. We have to do these conversations more, man, because there's a lot that we have to go over. We didn't even get into everything, right? But I wanted the video at a certain length so people could watch it, right? But I want to thank you for joining me today. Look, next weekend. Let's make an appointment. We got to get some other people on, and let's continue the conversation. There's always something happening. I think we should do this more often, right?
I think so too. I think we should do it. I want to discuss. You made a comment about interracial marriage. I want to hear your opinion about that.
Oh, my opinion is quite simple. I think black people.
I mean, we should make it a topic of discussion someday because.
Oh, no problem. That's fine by me. I've made my point clear to many people many times. That's fine.
So I think it would be interesting to leave such opinion for people to understand, because we need to educate our people on this. This is a very sensitive topic.
Sure.
So that people will be able to understand. So I think topics like this, we can bring them up. We can discuss interracial marriage, the advantage, the disadvantage of it. We can also discuss the role that China is playing around the world right now. Today, we have already discussed the ECO. I think we have a lot of topic to discuss.
There's still more to talk about the ECO, but we keep the videos to a certain length. Because you see, when we don't speak for a long time, there's so much to talk about, right? But when we do regular discussions, so if you know anybody else who want to come on and join us on the hangout, I'll be glad to host it, right? And we just have this conversation, especially the interracial marriage part, because there's a lot of people who don't like that. Africans don't like to hear you should marry another African. They don't like that. So, anyway, thank you for joining me, man. I mean, if whatever you want to discuss next week, we could discuss it. All right.
All right. So we'll take appointment for next week.
Peace, brother.
Peace.